Video assignment E6, Substitution, Indefinite Integrals. Learning outcomes for this lesson. Following the completion of the workbook assignment and the in-class activities, the successful student will be able to 13. Use integration by substitution to evaluate indefinite integrals. Advice for mastering the learning outcomes. Integration by substitution is a way to undo the chain rule. The substitution rule for indefinite integrals. If u equals g of x is a differentiable function whose range is an interval I and little f is continuous on I, then the indefinite integral of f of g of x times g prime of x dx is equal to the indefinite integral of f of u du, which is equal to capital F of u plus c, which is the same thing as capital F of g of x plus c, where capital F is an antiderivative of little f. So let's look a little bit at what's going on here. So in the statement of the substitution rule, u is the same thing as g of x. Okay. And what's going on here is when you do this substitution, basically you've got u, and then you've got u prime. And what the substitution really does is it sort of hides g of x and g prime of x. And the reason that you make the substitution exactly the way you do is du over dx is the same thing as g prime of x. In other words, or that implies, du is equal to g prime of x dx. At least if these ideas make any kind of sense whatsoever. And so when you do substitution, you sub in u for g of x, and then you sub in du for g prime of x dx, and that's really what's going on here. So you make the substitution, you anti-differentiate, thinking about u as being your variable, and then at the very end, you put the g of x back in. Steps for evaluating an indefinite integral using substitution. Number 1, try to match up the parts of your integrand with the parts in, take the derivative of the outside function, leaving the inside function alone. Then multiply by the derivative of the inside function. And typically the pieces that you're going to be able to spot most easily are the inside function left alone and then the derivative of the inside function. So those are the things that you should look for. Step 2, let u equal g of x, where g of x is usually an inside function in a composition. Determine g prime of x, step 3, determine g prime of x and find it inside your integrand and write du equals g prime of x dx. Step 4 is sub in u equals g of x and du equals g prime of x dx to get an indefinite integral with u's in it but no x's in it. The indefinite integral of f of u du. Step 5, integrate, and remember your plus c because you're doing an indefinite integral. Step 6, the last one, is sub the x's back in and get rid of all of the u's. In most situations, you can also evaluate the given indefinite integral using guess and check instead of substitution. However, if you guess, be sure to follow through carefully with the check step. It's crucial that you remember to apply the chain rule during the check step. And in fact, anytime you work a problem using integration by substitution, it's a good idea to check your answer, regardless of how you got it. And so maybe that should be like a number 7 here, optional, but highly, highly recommended, is check the answer that you got. Integration by substitution is also called substitution, U-substitution, and U-sub. So if you hear somebody referring to any of those in your future life, know that they all mean the same thing. They all mean integration by substitution.